Utah could be looking to add another premier defensive end. This one, a recruit who just decommitted from Washington. Let's talk about what he would bring to the team and if Utah is going to be able to bring him in on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments, and you can also follow our show on X at Locked On Utes. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can make every moment more. New customers can join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. You can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. And on today's show, I'm excited to be joined by Ute Zone's Nathan Roderick. And Nathan, this is a time now where most of the recruitment, normally you wouldn't be talking about recruits in the 2024 class because all the best guys are signed in that early signing day back in December. And we do have another upcoming signing day in kind of this February 7th date that's closing in. But, usually Utah just adds like one or two guys, but it's not as big of a deal because usually the best guys sign at the earlier one, like I mentioned. Well, the coaching shakeup that always occurs because of just the different movements and everything that happens can come to a ripple effect and impact programs. Last year, we saw how Alabama make change at their offensive coordinator because Bill O'Brien went to the NFL, nearly affected Utah with Andy Ludwig's near departure. This year, it's Nick Saban's himself's departure who affects Utah, but this time not amongst the coaching ranks, this one in a recruiting one because Washington had a 4-star defensive end committed to them, Ratumana Bolavu, and I apologize for mispronouncing his name. Promise I did my best in looking up a pronunciation guide for it. This is a guy who was a 4-star recruit going to the Huskies. He actually just visited Utah recently. He locked in visits with Utah and USC. He's a guy coming out of California who's got a ton of potential. We can talk about that in a second. But anytime you can add a 4-star defensive end, I think this would be an awesome get for Utah. And I think it's great that they've already locked in a visit with him. And like I said, we can talk about some of the tools in the moment, but I like that Utah is acting quick and trying to capitalize on the chaos that kind of happens whenever coaches move and change jobs. You see recruits decommit, then teams like Utah, programs like Utah can step in and try to bring a guy in.
Right. So this is a kind of funny how this all happens, when Nick Saban decides to hang it up and, it opens up the floodgates to many programs, including Washington, and Utah's already benefited from that with Tayshawn Lyons, the former receiver coming in. And so Ratumana is a big defensive end, coming from Southern California. And this is a position of immediate need, I think, for Utah with the departure of Jonah Ellis, as well as the injury to Logan Fano. His status, will be kind of uncertain, throughout the offseason. And so Utah had him on a visit, last week, and from what I heard, everything went well, and they provided a really compelling case to Ratumana. But those pesky Trojans always come in behind Utah, and they follow Morgan Scalley and his recruiting tactics, and he visited the Trojans over the weekend. So he should be making an announcement soon, but he'll be a great addition to Utah's defensive end room.
Yeah, you mentioned the size, 6'4", 260, a guy coming out of the Army and Navy Academy from California. Mentioned the 4-star prospect. And anytime you talk about defensive ends, like, yes, of course you want a guy who can stop the run, but especially like when it comes to the flash of being a defensive lineman, it's okay. How many sacks can you get? Over his last 2 years of high school football, he had 42 sacks. So this is a guy with the potential to get after the quarterback at a high level. And I still believe the most important position is football. I don't think anyone would dispute that. But then the debate becomes, is it protecting him or getting after him? I actually think protecting him has fallen to third now because of how athletic. If I can get a quarterback athletic enough to escape the pocket, buy time, avoid pressure, all those things, that's where, to me, offensive line had become slightly devalued versus having a pass rusher who can get in and collapse the pocket where there's not even an area to run away from. I think that's why I put a pass rusher number one. And if you got a guy who has 42 sacks like that, I just think he'd be a tremendous addition to this team. You make a great point talking about USC, and they're trying to do with their revamped defense as they look to enter the Big 12. And have a bounce back season. Major disappointment for the Trojans last year. I mean, what was expected? Anytime you have a returning Heisman Trophy winner, everything we thought we could potentially see out of Caleb Williams, and it just didn't come to fruition, particularly because of their offensive line and their inability to protect Caleb a lot of the time. And now they're trying to get in on an elite pass rusher too. And look, the Utah defensive end room is deep, but this is a guy to me that when you're talking about depending on what happens with a Van Fillinger, a Connor O'Toole after this year, like who's to say this is what makes Utah football so great? Why couldn't this guy come in and compete for a starting spot or a rotational opportunity in the 2024 season, or not 2024, excuse me, in the 2025 season once we see all those starters depart? And then especially once it comes to 26, like he could be one of the two guys at that spot too. So I think that's what makes Utah a great place for a guy like Ratumana's skill set is he knows he can come in, get developed. He can try to be the next Jonah Ellis, leading the team in sacks, have an opportunity to hear your name called in the NFL. And Utah allows these guys an opportunity to play early. That's why I feel like Utah is always going to be an attractive destination for players of this caliber.
Right. And you saw what happened to Logan Fano last year is that he transferred from BYU, and he hadn't really played any college football, until this last year. And he really impressed in spring ball and fall camp, and he immediately made an impact in the first game against Florida this last year. And so, the window will be open for another defensive end to come in and take some snaps, and Ratumana would be a great option for that. Odds are looking to USC's favor right now, I think, because of this recent visit, NIL opportunities at USC. But anytime that you can add someone like him, 4-star, 90 overall grade on the 247 site, you have to make room for him.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things, as you mentioned, is the NIL and all the other things that kind of go into that. It will be interesting to see if Utah can actually close the gap. But the nice thing is, even if Utah can't in this one, and look, you're right, if we had to place it, more than likely he'll end up at USC. I think Utah will have a chance as well. Utah's done enough NIL-wise, right? Cam Rising's here. Brant Keithy's here. There's some other good players that stayed at Utah. They are by no means the big dogs when it comes to NIL, I believe, but I think they can do enough where if the opportunity is enticing, I'm sure if it's a bidding war, this is no insider information, I'm sure the Trojans can offer more. That's just not, saying USC has more NIL resources than Utah, I don't think is breaking any news to anyone. And once again, that's no insider information. That's just how this sport usually works. Right. When you have the type of funding you're going to have at a USC versus a Utah, the difference in those two. But I do think this would be, like I said, a great addition. But even if they can't get him, right, I still like what Elijah Ellis could bring. Cash Dillon is another guy too. Just looking at the future, you did bring in other pass rushers and other depth pieces where even if you miss out on a guy like Ratumana, you're not like, oh no, we're getting no return on our edge investments from the 2024 class when you have other guys coming in.
Right. And I think especially on the defensive side of the ball, Utah's done a great job of being able to find guys in the transfer portal they can play right away. Those being like Gabe Reed and Levani Damuni, Logan Fano, all three guys that, that came into Utah over the last couple of years that were able to make an immediate impact. And so if that still is a need, come the summertime, I feel like Utah can fill that need, after spring ball, and, we'll see some more transfers in and out of the program. And so I think defensive end will be still in a good spot come the fall.
I absolutely agree. And, obviously we mentioned when Ratumana comes to Utah, he's hoping to be a guy that gets his skill sets developed and then go off and take his talents to the NFL. There were 3 Utes who were in action this past week at the Reese Senior Bowl that had an opportunity to do that, and all of them made a strong impression. Want to talk about the week that each of those players were able to have in one moment. But first, want to tell you a little bit more about our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and of course, placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways to end your season with a dub or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but also FanDuel has the bets for which player will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers can join today and you get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Capital LNO, one word, locked on. And you can make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Nathan, who are you feeling this week? Are you feeling the Chiefs? Are you feeling the 49ers? Where are you sitting at a couple of days out from the game?
I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I think that the 49ers haven't looked too hot so far during the playoffs, and I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes, especially in the Super Bowl. So I think the line's +2 for the Chiefs right now, I would hammer that if I could.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I'm right. I don't want to bet against Mahomes either, but make sure, however you guys are feeling, you head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today. Also want to discuss with all of you another sponsor here at Locked On Utes. It's our friends at UCCU. Learn and Earn, the UCCU mobile banking app that pays your entire family to learn about money. Kids look to parents to become more financially literate. Parents don't always know the answers. Learn and Earn breaks down financial topics into fun, bite-sized educational games like quiz and trivia. Every time a family member completes a topic, they earn points that can occur and can be redeemed for gift cards to stores like Amazon, Apple, Sephora, Walmart, Nike, and more. There is age-appropriate content for every member of the family. Compete against each other and track their progress on leaderboards. Learn and Earn is inside the UCCU mobile banking app, so you can play it anytime, anywhere. The more you play, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the more you earn. Learn and Earn, part of UCCU's award-winning Be Money Smart Youth Banking Program, helping kids, teens, and parents have fun while becoming more financially literate together. UCCU, love where you bank. All right, Nathan, talking about the Reese Senior Bowl, this is such a great thing that they put on every year. Jim Nagy and his staff do a great job assembling elite talent, and all of these guys have an opportunity to go against the best of the best, mostly upperclassmen. And then you get guys like Sione Vaki who also get to kind of enter the fray. You know, Cole Bishop as well had only been in school for a couple of years at Utah, and then he gets the opportunity to Sataoa Laumea, that true senior that you're used to seeing out of this. And there's a lot of talent on display, so you got to make plays and do things to stand out. And all three Utes were able to do so. I think first, let's start with Sione Vaki, who, not surprisingly, just turns heads every time he takes the field for how many things he can do. The Jets defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, said that what he impressed he has was who stood out the most this week, or just one of the guys. And he said one of the guys was Sione Vaki to him, because that's a guy who can play safety, linebacker, nickel, running back, and slot receiver. And he just said he's excited what he can do at the next level. And how can you not be with all the incredible plays that Sione was making last year? And he made his mark at the Senior Bowl too, Nathan.
Right. And I saw that they did some testing there. I saw there's the 40s and agility tests, and he was, one of the fastest guys, in the Senior Bowl and down in Mobile, Alabama. And so I think what teams like about him is he's a relentless, smart, nasty ball hawk. Exactly what Morgan Scalley teaches here at Utah. And you saw that with both Cole and Sione Vaki in the Senior Bowl. I think it was nice for teams to see him, away from a game, and see him in drills and see how fast he actually is, and to see his agility and his pass catching abilities. I think all of that was put on display, at this in Mobile, Alabama this last weekend. And I think everybody has their eyes on him because of so many possibilities, and each team might have a different need, and he can fulfill many needs on any team, in the NFL at this point.
He absolutely can. I'm so curious to see, depending on the team, I'm trying to think of NFL teams off the top of my head that are oh, they could use some help offensively. And just off the top of my head, the Jets, obviously Breece Hall's their starting running back, but wouldn't it be fun if they drafted Sione for the help out on defense, and then, you randomly put him in with different packages, got some blockers out in front of him and different things with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who would obviously be able to hit him in stride when he's a receiver out of the backfield. That's something that would excite me and be fun. And I think Sione is a guy who can plug and fit him into so many NFL teams, and his versatility is key. And speaking of versatility, that was one thing that Cole Bishop, going down to the Senior Bowl, really wanted to show out. He actually was he quoted in a thing put out on Twitter by Joe Castro as saying that the biggest things he wanted to accomplish at the Senior Bowl were just balling out and just showing that he's versatile. And I think he absolutely did that. I saw several clips of him in coverage where he's going against tight ends and just doing a good job holding his own. Yeah, there was one play I saw where he ended up getting beat over the top, but when the quarterbacks are Bo Nix, Michael Penix, all these other guys down there, it's not a bad thing to lose a rep or two. And I thought Cole was sensational. And I think he is a guy that, with how amazing he is close to the line of scrimmage, he's just such an elite, strong safety to me, with what Sione does as well. Sometimes he had to play out of position like this past year, but I think at the next level, that opportunity to be a strong safety, play close to the line, be more of a blitzer. I think he's going to be an exceptional player, and especially that ability to fake like you're blitzing and then cover a tight end or cover a guy in the slot a little bit, do all those things. Those are things Cole can do in a capacity, and I think that's going to be extremely valuable because he's one heck of a tackler too, Nathan.
Right. And I like how you said he plays best when he's closer to the line. I think of guys like, Travis Kelce, Greg Kittle, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, all these elite tight ends in the NFL. They're so difficult to defend because they're, one, physical and bigger than most safeties, and then they're also faster than most linebackers. And I think Cole Bishop does a great job being fast enough, to cover the elite route running of these tight ends, but also is physical enough so that he could take on a block, or when they're on the cut, that he stays right on their hip. And I think it just translates very well to today's NFL because of how much those tight ends are being used. I think he's better, closer to the line. I think his speed needs some work in the back end, especially in the NFL. But given the current climate of the NFL and how much teams are starting to use those tight ends, he's an elite matchup for any tight end in the NFL.
Absolutely. And Nathan, I heard when you're discussing those elite tight ends, you did mention Mr. Dalton Kincaid. That is someone that, of course, Cole Bishop has experience going against in practice from a couple years ago, too. So he's seen firsthand what it's like to battle with one of those elite tight ends, too. Also got to mix it up with Brant Keithy talking about the practice where you spend so much time in fall camp going against each other. So, I mean, you face Dalton Kincaid and Brant Keithy. You're going to be ready for, yes, of course, they're not Travis Kelce and, George Kittle and that yet, but those guys are already, like I said, he's gotten the experience in the practice. So I'm really excited for Cole. I think both Cole and Sione are going to be starters for a long time on the next level. I don't know if it'll happen right away, but I think they're going to be really good. I mean, someone like me who's a Vikings fan with Harrison Smith leaving, I can see a lot of qualities that Cole Bishop has that I would be really excited if my Vikings took a guy like that. Something my Vikings also could use help on always is the offensive line, and Utah had offensive lineman Sataoa Laumea in action, and the one-on-ones are always a huge piece of the Senior Bowl, whether it's receivers versus defensive backs, or especially something where it's offensive line versus D-line, and you're just going to be one-on-one. Everyone knows that you're going to be in action, actually, except for the offensive line. The offensive lineman never knows in a one-on-one like that, or very rarely, I should say. At least that's how I've seen most of the drills done, is the offensive lineman, they don't know at what point they're going to be active, and then the D-line, they just got to be ready each play for when they're going to engage. But he had an opportunity, a ton of one-on-ones, and I thought he overall played really well. I did think, though, just the Senior Bowl was once again another reminder. I think he's best inside. He went against Latu a lot, the UCLA edge rusher, who's probably going to be a first-round pick. That's why I was a little surprised he was at the Senior Bowl, but he was getting beat around the edge a few times there. He did win. He won some, lost some there, but I feel like he's better on the interior, and I'm glad he got opportunities to work on the interior as well. And I did see several people, including Bobby Football. I actually wrote down his last name incorrectly, so I apologize, Bobby. But he covers, just was one of the scouts in attendance at the Senior Bowl, and he named Sataoa as one of the winners. Also named Sione in that same list too, but he named Sataoa as one of his winners throughout the week. So I feel like Sataoa made out very well this past week too, Nathan.
Right. I think physically he has a great body for the NFL, and I agree with you where he's better off on the inside, where on the outside, I think those quicker defensive linemen and edge rushers like Latu have an advantage over him. But I think inside, he does a great job of being able to pull and get out of his stance pretty quickly and land some blocks at the second level. He does a great job of understanding, the different angles, when linebackers are moving. And he shows great quickness and flexibility on the, when getting downhill. I just think he needs to work on his footwork a little bit more on the outside, especially when going up against guys like Latu from UCLA. And so I think he's in a great position to get drafted, especially after a solid week down at the Senior Bowl. And so I am expecting him to get drafted at this point in time, and based off his performance, down in Alabama with so many scouts there, and he impressed a lot of guys. And I think he has a lot of upside just because of his size and his footwork in the NFL. I think he got a little lazy sometimes, this year, and got some bad habits. I think it's hard to judge this offensive line from this last year because of the position they were kind of put in. But I think he has a potential. I'll never forget, when I think it was 2021 against UCLA. In a pull block, and it was all over SportsCenter that night. And so that's the Laumea that I remember, and I know he has that potential to be mean and especially get downhill against those linebackers. So I think he has a great potential to put a decent NFL career together. I just hope it all works out for him.
I agree. And another thing that's big is you mentioned the versatility, like having played tackle and guard. In the NFL, you can only dress so many guys. And I think that is a huge thing for Sataoa early on. Maybe he's going to come in and win a starting job at guard early on, but I think he has a great chance to be active on game days rosters because, hey, he can be a guard and a tackle, and he has college experience doing both. And like I said, he projects better as a guard to me, but he can play tackle in the NFL. Like if you're going against the best guys, he's going to need some chip and help, but I still think he can do it as a backup. Like if an injury occurs and where's a situation he needs to step up. So that versatility is key. And love that you mentioned the UCLA block. That was exactly what I was thinking about. I can already still remember just Saturday running a pancake segment talking about Sataoa too. Like, oh, it's so great. So a great week for all three of those Utes. And now they all wait to see if they're going to get a combine invite as well. So that'll be something to monitor as that does come up. I think it is later in February normally. So that'll be something that we'll keep an eye on and definitely be discussing on Locked On Utes. Something else that we want to discuss with you all in one moment is the Utah Gymnastics team, who got another win, this one in ranked fashion against Oregon State, diving into another strong week for the Red Walks in one moment. But first, I want to tell you about our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Nathan, the Utah football program has been incredibly dominant, hence why we see these guys each year. There's Utah football players at the Senior Bowl in a position to get drafted because Utah is an elite program. And they are not the only athletic program at the University of Utah that is so like one of the best at what they do. Like Utah football, I would argue is a top 15 program over the last few years. Utah Gymnastics has been one of the programs in the collegiate gymnastics field over the last few years. And they got another win. They beat Arizona State last Friday or 2 Fridays ago. And then most recently coming off this one, they got February started right with a dub, beating Oregon State. Oregon State was ranked, but they got to host them at home. Utah did, and they took care of business as they always seem to do in the John M. Huntsman Center. They won at 197 to 750 to 196 100. So a kind of a blowout fashion if you're winning by that much in gymnastics. I think one of the notable things in this one was Miley O'Keefe adding to her Red Rocks just legendary career, tying the all-time career 10 mark. She earned her 10 score on beam, and she's just up there. She's at 14 career 10s. That's how many she's had. If she gets 15, that's the most all time. Incredible stuff for her. Just great to see this Utah gymnastics team to continue to do this thing, whether it's Cammie Winger, Jaden Rucker continues to be a star. Of course, McKenna Smith, Ashley Gillian, Jalen Gilstrap, so Amelia Morgan, so many players. Grace McCollum, already mentioned Miley. And we could go on. This Utah gymnastics program just continues to excel in so many facets, and it was fun to watch them continue to do their thing last Friday. And I'm just excited. I think we're going to see another national title run to get up to that point. I'm not sure they're going to win it. They haven't been able to get over that hump in a while, but I'm feeling good about this team and what they continue to do. And this was a really impressive home win.
Right. I think the best part about this win is it was their highest scoring, meet of the season so far. So they're continually getting better. They had a eventful off season, with some coaching changes, and it seems like they are finally starting to get over that hump and get comfortable with each other. And they're right in their groove right now. Like I said, their highest scoring meet so far this year, and hopefully that's just the beginning of another, Pac-12 title run.
Definitely feels like it's the beginning of something special. It'll be interesting to monitor and see what happens. Just like it'll be interesting to continue to monitor all the Utah football news going on. If you guys want to read some of Nate's stuff, make sure you head over to 24/7 Sports at Ute Zone. They do a fantastic job over there. Nathan, thank you for joining us.
Yep. Thank you, JT.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We'll be back tomorrow talking more Utah football recruiting. We'll see you then.